It was Christmas Eve, and the air was crisp, filled with the sound of distant laughter and the soft jingling of holiday tunes. The streets were bustling with last-minute shoppers, eager to find that perfect gift. But for Claire, a hard-working, single mum, Christmas wasn't about shopping or gifts this year. Her car had broken down, again, and with her 2 kids relying on her for everything, she didn't have the time or money to deal with it. Claire had been juggling 2 jobs just to keep the lights on and food on the table. She worked long shifts at the local diner, and when she wasn't there, she picked up extra hours cleaning offices. Life hadn't been easy since her husband passed away, and every day felt like a battle she had to face alone. The car was just another setback in an already difficult year. With no other option, Claire called around to different repair shops, hoping someone would take a look at her car before Christmas. Most places were either closed for the holidays or charging prices that would drain her savings. She was about to give up when a friend recommended a small garage on the outskirts of town, run by a mechanic named Mike. Mike was known around the neighborhood as a quiet guy, someone who kept to himself, but always helped out when he could. His garage was modest, just a small one-man operation, but he had a reputation for being honest and fair. Claire decided to give him a call, though she didn't hold much hope that he'd have the time, or that she could afford the repairs. When Mike answered the phone, Claire explained her situation, her voice shaky with worry. She was honest. Her car had been acting up for months, and now it wouldn't even start. She didn't know what was wrong with it, and she couldn't pay for an expensive repair, but she needed it to get to work, to get her kids to school. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Mike spoke. "Bring it in," he said simply. "I'll see what I can do." Claire loaded her kids into a taxi and drove to the garage, unsure of what to expect. When she arrived, Mike greeted her with a kind but weary smile. He took one look at the car and knew it was going to take more than just a quick fix. But something about Claire's tired eyes and the way her kids huddled close to her touched him. Without a second thought, he told her not to worry about the cost. "Consider it a Christmas gift," he said. Claire couldn't believe it. She protested, trying to offer what little money she had, but Mike waved her off. "I've got this," he said, already rolling up his sleeves to start the work. Claire sat on a bench with her kids, watching in disbelief as Mike worked tirelessly, his hands moving swiftly under the hood. Hours passed, but Mike didn't stop until the job was done. By the time he handed Claire the keys, it was late, and the snow had started to fall. She thanked him over and over, her eyes welling with tears of gratitude. Mike just nodded, wishing her a Merry Christmas before heading back into his garage. Claire drove away, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. It was the first time in a long time she felt like things might actually be okay. But what Mike didn't know was that his simple act of kindness was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The next morning, as Mike sat in his garage, sipping on a cup of coffee and enjoying the quiet before the day began, he heard a knock on the door. It was Claire, but this time, she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a man in a suit, holding an envelope. Mike's heart raced as he opened it, his hands trembling. Inside was something that would turn his world upside down. Mike stood there, staring at the envelope in his hands, completely baffled. Claire watched him with a nervous smile, her kids peeking out from behind her, clearly as curious as he was. The man in the suit, someone Mike had never seen before, nodded encouragingly for him to open it. Mike slowly tore it open, unsure of what he was about to find inside. Inside the envelope was a letter, handwritten in neat script, and something else, a check, Mike's eyes widened as he glanced at the amount written on it. His heart pounded in his chest as he reread the figure, not believing what he was seeing. It was more money than he had ever dreamed of, enough to completely turn his life around. The letter explained everything. Claire's husband, before he passed away, had worked as an investment advisor for a well-known firm. He had put away a significant sum of money for his family, hoping to ensure they would always be taken care of. However, after his sudden passing, there had been complications with the estate, and Claire had been locked in a legal battle for years to access those funds. Just days before her car broke down, she had finally won the case, gaining full control of the money her husband had left for her and the kids. When Mike had fixed her car for free on Christmas Eve, she hadn't known about the settlement yet. But after receiving the money, she knew right away what she wanted to do. Mike's kindness had saved her during one of the darkest times in her life, and she wanted to repay him in a way that would truly change his life, just like he had unknowingly done for her. Mike was speechless. He tried to hand the check back, insisting he couldn't accept such a gift, but Claire shook her head firmly. "You gave me something far more valuable," she said softly. "You gave me hope when I didn't have any left. This is the least I can do." Still, Mike struggled with the idea of accepting such a huge amount of money. He had never been one to expect anything in return for his kindness. In fact, most of his life had been spent helping others, quietly, without recognition. He'd always believed that doing good for others was its own reward. But now, standing there with Claire and her kids smiling up at him, he realized that sometimes good deeds have a way of coming back in the most unexpected ways. As the days passed, Mike found himself in a whirlwind of emotions. The money Claire had given him wasn't just a life-changing amount. It was enough to allow him to finally expand his small garage, hire help, and invest in better tools and equipment. His business, which had always been a struggle to keep afloat, could now thrive. But beyond that, it was the sense of purpose that filled him that he couldn't shake. For years, Mike had quietly helped others in the community, whether it was fixing cars for free, offering rides to people stranded on the road, or lending a hand whenever someone needed it. But he never expected anything in return. The kindness he had shown to Claire had been no different. He didn't do it for recognition, just like he never did. He had simply seen someone in need and stepped in, like he always did. But now, with this unexpected blessing, he found himself wondering what more he could do. The money wasn't just for him. It was a chance to make a bigger impact, to give back even more to the people who needed it. He began thinking of ways to use his newfound fortune to help others, to pay forward the kindness that had come full circle for him. As the weeks went by, Mike became a bit of a local legend. Word of his story spread around town, and more people began to seek him out, not just for car repairs, but for advice, for help, or just to thank him for being a symbol of what it meant to truly give from the heart. But even as the praise and attention came his way, Mike remained humble, never seeking the spotlight. He focused on his work, helping those who came to him in need, just like always. But life has a way of testing even the kindest hearts, and soon enough, Mike would find himself facing a new challenge, one that would push him to the limits of what he thought he was capable of. A developer, eager to buy up property in the area, approached Mike with an offer to buy his garage. They wanted to tear it down and build luxury apartments in its place. The offer was tempting, far beyond the value of the small space he had called his business for years. But there was a catch. If Mike sold the garage, the people in the community who had come to rely on him, the single mothers, the struggling families, the neighbors who needed help, would be left without the one place they could always count on. The developer didn't care about the people. only the profit they stood to make. Mike was torn. The money from the developer could allow him to retire comfortably, to live without the stress of running a business. But deep down, he knew that his work was about more than just fixing cars. Mike stood in the garage late one evening, his hands resting on the hood of a car he had just finished working on. The tools were scattered around him, but his mind was far from the task at hand. The offer from the developer weighed heavily on him, and time was running out. He knew he had to make a decision soon. The money would provide him with a level of security he had never experienced. But in his heart, he couldn't ignore the voice, telling him that selling the garage would mean abandoning the people who relied on him, the very community he had spent years quietly helping. The next day, Claire stopped by the garage to check in on Mike. She had heard about the developer's offer and could see the conflict in Mike's eyes. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently, her voice filled with concern. Mike sighed, leaning against the workbench. "I don't know," he admitted. "It's a lot of money, more than I could ever dream of. But this garage, it's not just about the cars. It's about the people." Claire smiled softly, nodding in understanding. "I know," she said. "You helped me when no one else would, and I'm not the only one. You've made a difference in so many lives, Mike. This garage is more than just a place to fix cars. It's a lifeline for people who don't have anywhere else to turn." Her words struck a chord with Mike. He had always known, deep down, that his work was about more than just car repairs. It was about being there for people when they needed help the most, even if they couldn't pay him back. It was about the sense of community that had grown around the garage, the way people came together to support one another. Selling the garage would mean losing all of that, but turning down the offer meant walking away from a chance at financial security, something he had never really had before. As the deadline to accept the developer's offer approached, Mike found himself at a crossroads. The pressure was mounting, and he still hadn't made a decision. That evening, as he locked up the garage, he noticed a small crowd gathering outside. Neighbors, families, and customers, people from the community, had come to show their support for him. Some held signs thanking him for his kindness, while others simply stood in quiet solidarity. One by one, they shared their stories. How Mike had helped them when they were in need. How his generosity had made a difference in their lives. Claire spoke about how he had fixed her car for free on Christmas Eve, a gesture that had meant everything to her and her kids. Others talked about how Mike had gone out of his way to help them, never asking for anything in return. The outpouring of gratitude was overwhelming, and for the first time, Mike realized just how much of an impact he had made on the people around him. It became clear to Mike that the garage wasn't just his. It belonged to the community, and no amount of money could replace that. The next morning, he called the developer and turned down the offer. He knew it wouldn't be easy to keep the garage going, but he also knew that the people who counted on him were worth more than any check. As word spread about Mike's decision, something incredible happened. The community came together to support him in ways he never expected. Donations started pouring in, small amounts from people who wanted to give back to the man who had given so much. Local businesses offered to pitch in, helping Mike with supplies and repairs. Even customers who couldn't afford to pay in the past found ways to help, whether by volunteering their time or spreading the word about his garage. Mike's act of kindness had come full circle. He had always believed in giving without expecting anything in return, and now the community he had helped for so many years was giving back to him. The garage became busier than ever, not just with repairs, but with people coming by to offer their support, share their stories, and continue the cycle of kindness. In the end, Mike realized that the true value of his work wasn't in the money he could make, but in the lives he had touched. The garage wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that change lives. As he stood outside his garage one evening, watching the sunset with a smile on his face, Mike knew he had made the right choice. He had given more than just car repairs. He had given his heart to the community, and in return, they had given him something priceless, a sense of belonging, and a legacy that would last far beyond any dollar amount. The story of the mechanic who fixed a single mom's car for free on Christmas had a far-reaching impact, one that continued to inspire others long after. Mike's garage became a beacon of kindness in a world that sometimes felt too busy to stop and help. And as the years went by, Mike never forgot the lesson he had learned, that sometimes the greatest gifts come not from what we receive, but from what we give.